Some time ago, I made a video and a table for my brother as a surprise table. And this is black walnut. And I really like the table, except for one small problem. I don't know if you can see that, but it warped. It bowed really bad. So I asked my brother to send me the table, which I have received, and I've got a week to fix it and get it back to him. So what I think I'm going to do, and hopefully I don't mess this up, is I'm gonna make some, I saw a video with from Mark Spagnolo where he made some curves in a table that warped for him. Okay, so the plan is to make some curves on the bottom side where the warp is, and not go all the way through, just to go you know, maybe 3/4, a little bit more through. Problem is that the sides are not flat, so I can't use the fence. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use my favorite jig here, which is my my Dumaflachi jig. This is a jig that's good for making tapered cuts, also good for jointing. And what I can do with this jig is I can clamp it down, and which is something I really want to do anyways, and then I can make my curves and then hold the board stable. So I've cut curves on the bottom of this tabletop and went almost all the way through. So what that's going to allow me to do is to flatten the board. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use my tapering jig, because it's a nice flat board, and I'm going to clamp each one of these sections to the board individually. After adding some tape to keep the epoxy from overflowing. And once they're clamped, then I'm going to pour epoxy into these curves to basically glue this into a flat place. So that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so the epoxy is dry enough to take the clamps off, I think, now. And let's hope I didn't epoxy my clamps onto the board too well, but we'll see. I will put it on time lapse so you don't hear me cussing too bad. But check this out. I think every time I deal with epoxy, I think this is cool. I peeled this outside the inside of the cup that I use for mixing epoxy, and I think that's kind of neat. I still throw them away, but you know, it's just a matter of pressing it out. After doing a rough sanding with the drum sander, I have sanded it all the way up to 320 grit. You know, I don't do a lot of stains, so I'm not too worried about over sanding. And I'm getting ready to restore my members mark on here. it is like glass right now. It is beautiful. So to prevent it from warping again, I'm going to put on several coats and build up a heck of a coat of polyurethane finish in the hope of the plastic-like film finish will prevent moisture from getting to the wood in the future. And that I will do tomorrow. I am hoping that this is done. I think it looks really nice. If it warps again, I don't know what I can do. It's possible. It has a little bit of a twist in it right now, but that might have been from me not noticing that it had a twist when I was done. So we'll see if it picks up a warp again, and otherwise this project is finished. Hang on just a moment. Let's wait a day before we say this project is finished. Let's see what's going to happen. Well, darn. This overnight, this board developed a bit of a warp again, and I'm not really sure if it's all that much of a problem. It could be just it finding its natural place in the world and it's not going to warp anymore, or it could be that it's going to continue to warp. If this table was in my house, I would just reattach it to the legs and see what happens. And if it got warped again, then I would reassess the situation. However, this table is in my brother's house, which is roughly 5 hours away, and it's a bit of a pain in the ass to get this tabletop back and forth. So I'm going to do some more stuff to it. Now, one thing I could do on the bottom is I could just add a piece of plywood just like this with the beveled edges, spray paint it black. Nobody will ever see it. They wouldn't know it exists, and that would do just fine. The concern I have with this idea is that if I do that, it will work, but if the warp gets bad again, then this piece of plywood is going to keep the tabletop from moving, and if the warp gets bad again, then what will happen is that the other side of the table will probably crack, and the side that's the pretty side that you really don't want to mess up. So what I could do to alleviate that is recurve this, cutting out this epoxy, and then the whole tabletop would be basically flexible. Add this base, this piece of plywood, and everything would be hunky-dory and beautiful. However, the curves would show through the edge. They show now with the epoxy, but it doesn't look that terrible. But the cutout curves would look pretty bad. So I live in an area that does not have easy access to hardwoods. So all I have left of the wood from this project are these two pieces of black walnut. Now what I could do is I could go ahead and cut off this end here, and same thing with this other end. Go ahead and kerf it, and then edge band these two pieces after thicknessing them to the right thickness. Woohoo! Okay, I recurved the bottom of the tabletop, and I didn't show it on the video because it was exactly the same process as the first time I did it. Only this time there's a whole bunch of epoxy flying all over the place. I really hate working with epoxy, especially cutting it, because it smells so bad. But, life's rough. So now here's the problem. It's now sitting flat, but you can clearly see, well, on camera it's not showing too well, but in reality you can clearly see these curves. So the question is, do I leave them, or do I go ahead and deal with it? I spoke to my brother, and I sent him a picture of this edge, and he says it's fine. So we're just going to go ahead and go for it and leave it as it is. So I'm going to attach the plywood backing, and this will be done. Hopefully it will stay flat this time. I painted the piece of plywood black so that it's less noticeable if somebody looked from underneath. And I made the holes larger than they needed to be to allow for wood movement. And now it's flat. Let's just hope this works out. Next step, if this fails again, is to get some walnut plywood and some more black walnut and just do this whole tabletop over. Good. Finally, after every woodworking project, you should always count your fingers. You end with 10. Good job.